Funny, isn't it? We live in a world that teaches us to measure wealth only by what jingles in our pockets or sits in our accounts. Money, property, possessions. We call them assets, as though they alone determine whether we will stand or fall when the ground shakes. But tell me, what happens when the bank account empties, when the job disappears, when the house no longer feels safe? Does a man then become poor? Or does he discover something else, something quieter, waiting within him all along? In hard times, most people look around and see only what they've lost. They cling to numbers, to titles, to all the things that slip away the moment life tightens its grip. But the truth, the one that few are willing to look at, is that you already carry an asset more valuable than money, more enduring than property, more faithful than luck. You carry it everywhere you go, yet you almost never count it. This asset is not seen in the mirror, not weighed on a scale, not locked in a vault. It is invisible, and so people dismiss it. They think it has no value because no one claps for it, no one trades it on a market. But in silence, in suffering, when everything else has failed you, it remains. And it is then that you will learn whether you ignored it, or nurtured it, or wasted it. The old philosophers had many names for it. The Stoics called it the ruling faculty, the mind that cannot be enslaved unless you hand it over. The Taoists spoke of it as the flow of the way, the ability to bend with the river instead of breaking against it. The Buddhists whispered that it was right view, the clarity to see pain without multiplying it. Different names, different traditions, but all pointing to the same quiet treasure. It is your inner stance, your way of meeting the storm, the posture of your spirit when the world shakes. Think of it this way. A tree is not tested on a sunny day. It is tested when the winds howl, when the rain hammers down, when its branches snap and its roots are dragged at by the flood. And yet, some trees remain, not because they are the tallest, not because they are the prettiest, but because they learned long ago to root themselves deep and to bend when they must. So it is with you. You will not be measured by how much you had when life was easy. You will be measured by how you meet life when it is not. And here lies the irony. The only true asset you have in hard times is not what you own, but who you are. Most people ignore this. They search for saviors outside themselves, forgetting that the world can strip everything but cannot strip the way you choose to meet it. Even in chains, a man's mind is his own. Even in loss, his response is his own. Even in grief, his heart may still choose dignity, or love, or patience. This, and nothing else, is the asset you have been carrying all along. And so I ask you, when the winds rise, when the night grows heavy, where will you turn? To the things that can be taken, or to the thing that never leaves?
You see, the trouble is not that people lack this asset. The trouble is that they forget it exists. They look at their empty wallet and think, I am empty too. They lose a job and whisper to themselves, I am worthless now. They suffer a setback and decide, I am finished. But do you notice the mistake? The wallet is not you. The job is not you. The setback is not you. Yet in the noise of fear and comparison, you begin to believe that your value and your outer circumstances are the same. That is how the richest part of you is neglected, not because it was never there, but because you chose not to look at it. I once knew a man who lost everything in a single year. His business failed, his home was repossessed, his friends disappeared when the invitations stopped. By the world's measure, he was ruined. But he told me something I never forgot. He said, "The strange thing is, when it all collapsed, I felt lighter. Because what I feared most had already happened, and yet I was still here. I was breathing. I was thinking. I was still able to choose what to do next. And that meant I was not poor." That, my friend, is the quiet revelation. Poverty is not the absence of money. Poverty is the absence of self-awareness, the blindness to the asset you carry inside. But the blindness is common. You may wake up in the morning weighed down by anxiety. You look at the day ahead and feel powerless. Yet if you listen closely, what makes you powerless is not the day, but the thought in your mind. "I cannot handle this." That is the place where the battle is lost before it begins, in the imagination, not in reality. Seneca once said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." He was right. You suffer 1,000 times in thought before the trouble even arrives. You fall into despair before the first step is taken. You abandon your asset not because it failed you, but because you left it unused. Think about it. Two people may walk through the same storm, but one is broken and the other is strengthened. The storm was the same. The difference was not in the wind, but in the stance they chose to take. One fought the storm as if he could stop the rain from falling. The other accepted the rain, lifted his face to the sky, and kept walking. Which of them used his asset? Which of them ignored it? This is the strange mercy of hardship. It reveals what you truly lean on. If you have been leaning only on money, you will crumble when it is gone. If you have been leaning only on comfort, you will panic when it is taken away. But if you have learned to lean on your inner stance, on the quiet strength of your mind and heart, then nothing outside can rob you of yourself. Do not misunderstand me. I do not say money is useless or comfort is evil. They have their place, just as a warm coat has its place on a winter's night. But they are not you. They are not your deepest asset. And when the coat is torn or the fire burns out, you must know how to sit in the cold without losing yourself. That is what most people ignore. They spend their lives polishing their coins, arranging their furniture, showing off their titles. And all the while, the one treasure that will decide their peace is left neglected, untrained, forgotten. And when the hard times come, as they always do, they stand trembling, thinking they have nothing left, not realizing that the greatest wealth was never in their pockets, but in their posture toward life itself.
Imagine a traveler setting out on a long road. He carries a heavy pack on his back, stuffed with clothes, food, coins, and maps. Along the way, the weather turns, storms rise. The road becomes steep and cruel. One by one, the things in his pack are lost. The food spoils, the maps are ruined by rain, the coins are stolen while he sleeps. At last, his shoulders are bent, his body is weary, and he thinks he has nothing left. But what he forgets is that inside that same pack, tucked into the corner, there has always been a small tool,
sturdy, simple, overlooked. With it, he can mend, he can build, he can start again. Yet in his panic, he never thinks to reach for it. He tells himself he is powerless, even while the very thing he needs rests against his back. This is how most people live. They wander through hardship, losing what the world has given them, and they despair. But the tool they need most, their ability to endure, to choose their response, to find clarity when everything else is noise, is already theirs. They just never reach for it. You see, the human spirit has a strange resilience. It bends farther than you imagine. It lasts longer than you think. But it must be remembered. It must be awakened. Otherwise, it is like that tool, gathering dust in the corner, useless, not because it cannot work, but because it is never touched. When you forget your inner asset, you become like the traveler begging for directions, even though he still has his own 2 feet. You search for saviors outside of yourself, as though you were born helpless. But you were not born helpless. You were born with the capacity to endure loss, to transform pain, to walk forward even when the ground shakes. That is the hidden inheritance no one can take. Perhaps you have noticed it in small ways. The day you thought you could not rise from bed, yet somehow you did. The time you believed you would break under grief, yet months later you found yourself smiling at something simple. The moment you feared the worst outcome only to realize you survived it after all. These are glimpses of the asset within you, unpolished, uncelebrated, yet unshakable. The world will tell you otherwise. It will tell you that your worth lies in your possessions, in your victories, in the applause of others. And as long as you believe that, you will remain a beggar in your own kingdom, starving while holding a feast in your hands. No, your greatest asset is not the applause, not the coins, not the fleeting titles. It is the unyielding place inside you that says, even if all else is stripped away, I remain. That place is quiet. It does not boast, but it is the only thing that will not abandon you in the storm. So I ask you now, when the road turns against you, will you keep searching for coins that roll away? Or will you finally reach into your own pack and remember the tool that has always been there?
Hardship is not only a thief, it is also a teacher. It strips away the illusions you once leaned on, and in their absence, it forces you to see what remains. You do not learn who you are when the table is full and the roof is secure. You learn it when the table is empty and the roof leaks and you are left standing in the rain. That is when your true asset is tested. That is when it either rises to the surface or sinks forgotten. Think of fire. Place straw in it, and the straw vanishes in smoke. Place gold in it, and the gold shines more brightly than before. So it is with your spirit. In the fire of adversity, what is weak burns away. What is strong endures, purified, made more certain. Yet most people only curse the fire. They see only the loss, not the gift hidden in the flames. They cry, "Why me?" instead of asking, "What can be revealed in me?" But the fire does not care for your protest. It burns anyway. And if you are willing, it can shape you into something truer than what you were before. I have lived long enough to see this pattern repeat itself. A man who is never tested becomes fragile. He is like glass, clear, polished, but quick to shatter. A man who has walked through storms becomes steady. He is like stone, rough perhaps, scarred perhaps, but unbroken. Do you see the irony? What most people dread, loss, difficulty, hardship, is the very soil in which their hidden asset grows roots. Without resistance, the muscle weakens. Without pressure, the diamond is never formed. Without darkness, the flame is never seen. But here is the secret few understand. The growth is not automatic. Hardship alone does not guarantee wisdom. Many suffer and remain bitter. Many lose and become only harder, not deeper. The fire can consume you, or it can refine you. The difference is in whether you remember the asset within you, whether you choose to lean on it instead of cursing what cannot be changed. When you meet adversity with awareness, you stop asking, "When will this end?" and begin asking, "What is this shaping in me?" That shift alone transforms the experience. The outer pain may not lessen, but the inner stance grows steady. You no longer break at the first wind. You bend. You endure. You discover the strength you always carried, waiting for the chance to be known. This is why some of the wisest souls I have ever met were not those who lived easy lives, but those who endured hard ones with open eyes. They were not spared from suffering, no one is, but they chose not to waste it. They let the fire teach them. They let the storm show them their roots. And in the end, they became something the world could not shake. And so, if you find yourself in hardship now, do not despise it too quickly. Do not assume it has come only to ruin you. It may have come to reveal you.
When a man ignores his inner asset, his life becomes restless. He may appear strong on the outside, but inside he is fragile, always at the mercy of whatever comes next. He clings to possessions, to titles, to praise, because without them he feels empty. And when even one of these is threatened, fear rises in him like a tide. Have you noticed how easily people can be shaken? A harsh word ruins their day. A small loss becomes a catastrophe. A change in fortune throws them into despair. This is what happens when you lean only on what can be taken away. You live as a guest in your own house, never knowing when the door will close against you. I once sat with a man who had lost his wealth. His hands shook as he spoke. He said, "I am nothing now. Everything I worked for is gone." I listened quietly, then asked him, "Tell me, what is gone?" He listed the money, the business, the home. I nodded, then asked again, "But what remains?" He stared at me as though I had spoken nonsense. He had forgotten to look at himself. He had forgotten that he was still breathing, still capable of thought, still able to choose his next step. He had ignored the one asset that could not be stolen. This forgetting is common. It happens because the world teaches you to measure yourself by surfaces. The world does not clap for patience. It does not applaud resilience. It does not honor quiet dignity. And so you forget that these things matter. You forget that they are wealth. But the one who remembers walks differently. Even in loss, he does not collapse. Even in confusion, he is not frantic. There is a steadiness about him, a calm that others cannot understand. They look at him and say, "How can you be at peace when everything is falling apart?" He answers not with many words, but with his presence. For he has remembered the asset within him. He has leaned on it, and it has held. This is not to say he feels no sorrow. He does. It is not to say he avoids every fear. He feels it. But his sorrow does not consume him, and his fear does not command him. He knows these are waves passing over the ocean, not the ocean itself. And because he knows this, he remains. Do you see the contrast? The one who forgets spends his life chasing what he cannot control. He is always desperate, always afraid, always one step from despair. The one who remembers may lose as much or more, yet he carries a quiet wealth the world cannot measure. He does not live as a guest in his own house. He lives as its keeper. The difference between them is not luck, it is not fate. It is the simple act of remembering, to look within, to see what remains, to lean on the one asset that does not vanish when the storm arrives. And so I ask you, which kind of man will you be when the winds rise? The one who trembles because his coins are gone, or the one who stands because his center is intact?
The saddest thing, perhaps, is that most people do not lose their inner asset by accident. They trade it away, piece by piece, without even noticing. Not for gold or bread, but for smaller things. The fleeting satisfaction of anger, the brief comfort of fear, the shallow pride of being right. Every time you let your temper decide your words, you hand over a fragment of your calm. Every time you let fear dictate your choices, you surrender a measure of your freedom. Every time you cling to resentment instead of releasing it, you mortgage your peace to a debt that never ends. It happens quietly. A man believes he is defending himself, but in truth he is selling himself. He believes he is gaining something, but in the bargain he loses the only thing he truly owned, the way he carries himself through the storm. I have seen people so chained to anger that they no longer recognize themselves. Every slight, every disappointment, every failure becomes fuel for the fire within them. They believe this fire keeps them strong, but it only burns their own house down. What use is anger if it robs you of the inner stance that could carry you with dignity? Fear does the same. It whispers that if you give it enough attention, you will be safe. But the opposite is true. The more you bow to fear, the smaller your world becomes. You stop walking certain roads. You stop trying new doors. You stop living freely. You trade your vast inheritance for a cage of your own making. And then there is pride, the most deceptive thief of all. Pride convinces you that you must never bend, never admit weakness, never be wrong. But what is this if not a refusal to learn? What is this if not the rejection of growth? Pride turns the asset of your spirit into brittle stone, easy to crack when life applies its pressure. These are the ways people lose themselves in plain sight, not because someone stole their strength, but because they handed it away, moment by moment, choice by choice. But you need not continue this trade. You can choose to keep your wealth intact. You can pause before the angry word and remember that your calm is worth more. You can step through fear, even trembling, and discover that your freedom is worth more than your safety. You can bow your pride and realize that humility is not weakness, but a doorway into wisdom. Each time you do this, you reclaim a piece of the asset you had forgotten. You restore the posture of your spirit. You remember that while the world may take your coins, your comforts, even your health, it cannot take the one thing that belongs only to you, unless you give it away. So ask yourself gently, how often have you traded away your wealth today? And will you keep trading it tomorrow?
The truth is, you cannot wait for the storm to arrive before you begin strengthening your roots. If you neglect your inner asset in times of calm, do not be surprised if it fails you in times of chaos. A tree does not wait for winter to deepen its roots. It grows them quietly each day, long before the frost appears. So it must be with you. Every ordinary day, every small choice is an invitation to nurture the wealth within. When you choose patience instead of haste, you are watering the roots. When you choose silence instead of needless argument, you are deepening the trunk. When you choose gratitude instead of complaint, you are stretching your branches toward the light. These are not small acts. They are daily investments in the only asset that endures. Most people do not see the value in this. They tell themselves, I will be calm when the trouble comes. I will be strong when I need to be. But strength does not appear on command. It is built in secret, in the unnoticed hours when you choose the harder path of self-mastery over the easier path of indulgence. Think of water carving stone. Not once, not twice, but with a steady persistence that no eye can measure in the moment. And yet, after years, the hardest rock is shaped by the gentlest stream. That is how the spirit grows steady, not in sudden leaps, but in quiet, repeated choices. There is a peace that comes from this kind of practice. It is not dramatic. It does not need applause. It simply settles into you like a deep breath. You find yourself less easily shaken, less quickly angered, less desperate when things do not go your way. And when the storm finally breaks, you are surprised to discover that you are not scrambling for strength. You already carry it. This is why some souls seem unmovable. It is not because their lives were easier. It is because they tended to themselves when no one was watching. They learned to govern their thoughts, to guide their responses, to live by choice rather than impulse. And so, when hardship arrived, they did not collapse. They leaned on what they had been building all along. But remember, the opposite is also true. If you waste your days on complaint, on fear, on bitterness, you are weakening the very thing you will one day need. You are living on credit, spending tomorrow's strength on today's impatience. And when the storm arrives, you will find yourself bankrupt. So the question is not whether the storm will come. It will. The question is whether you will have anything left to stand on when it does. Will you have invested in your only true wealth? Or will you find that you traded it away for shadows and noise?
Your inner asset was not given only so that you might survive. Survival is only the beginning. Its greater purpose is transformation. It is the alchemy that takes what was meant to break you and turns it into something that shapes you, and through you shapes others. You have seen this before, though perhaps you did not notice it at the time. Someone who has endured deep sorrow and yet emerges with a gentleness that softens the hearts of others. Someone who has walked through loss and yet offers comfort more genuine than words from those who have never suffered. Someone who has tasted despair and yet carries hope like a lantern for those still stumbling in the dark. This is not an accident. It is the fruit of remembering the asset within. Hardship, when met with awareness, does not simply leave scars. It leaves wisdom. It leaves compassion. It leaves a strength that no ease could have produced. The Stoics taught that difficulty is the forge of character. Taoists spoke of yielding to the current, not to escape the river, but to learn its ways. Buddhists reminded us that suffering, rightly seen, becomes the seed of awakening. Different words, but all pointing to the same truth. What you carry inside can take pain itself and make it serve your growth. But if you ignore this asset, suffering becomes only suffering. Pain becomes only pain. You stumble, you curse, you repeat the same mistakes. The wound remains raw, and you remain blind. Nothing is gained, only endured. This is the tragedy of those who never turned inward. Their storms pass, but they remain unchanged, still waiting for life to be gentle before they can find peace. Yet peace does not wait for gentleness. Peace is born in the middle of the storm, when you choose to stand differently. And once born, it does not stay hidden. Others see it. Others feel it. Your calm steadies them. Your endurance gives them courage. Your quiet hope becomes a light they did not know they needed. Do you see now? Your greatest asset is not only for you. It is also for those who walk beside you. When you remain unshaken, they remind them that they too can remain. When you turn your pain into wisdom, you hand them a map through their own wilderness. When you refuse to trade away your dignity, you prove that dignity is possible, even in loss. And perhaps this is the deepest gift. That your suffering, when met with awareness, does not end with you. It becomes part of a larger story,
one where even in the darkest valley, the flame of the human spirit does not go out. So do not waste your hardship. Do not curse it until it passes. Use it. Shape it. Let it shape you. And in time, let it shape others through you. For this is how a single life lived with awareness becomes more than survival. It becomes a beacon.
When I told you that your most overlooked asset in hard times is your mindset, I was not speaking of something small. No, it is far greater than that. A mindset is not simply positive thinking. That is shallow and fragile. A mindset is the entire framework through which you interpret reality, the lens through which you see problems, possibilities, and your own place in the world. And here is the truth. In times of difficulty, your mindset becomes a multiplier. It can multiply despair until it crushes you completely, or it can multiply resilience until it carries you further than you imagined possible. That is why two people can face the same hardship, and yet one grows bitter while the other grows wiser. One sees only endings, while the other quietly prepares for new beginnings. Think of a field after a storm. The storm has flattened the crops, broken branches, and left the soil muddy. One farmer looks at the mess and says, "All is lost. I will never recover." He abandons the field. He allows the mud to harden into stone. Another farmer looks at the same land and says, "The storm has passed. The soil is richer now, and I must plant again." He bends down, gets his hands dirty, and begins. 10 years later, whose children eat in abundance? It is not the storm that determined their fate. It was the mindset with which they approached the storm's aftermath. Your mindset is your hidden compass. In times of comfort, it quietly directs your small choices. But in times of hardship, it becomes your entire map. If your mindset tells you, "I am powerless, nothing I do matters," then every step you take will confirm that belief. You will see only locked doors. But if your mindset whispers, "Even in loss, I still have agency. Even in difficulty, there is something to learn, something to try," then you will notice cracks of light others ignore. You will test doors others assume are closed. And often those small cracks lead to great openings. You may wonder, but how do I change my mindset in the middle of hardship? Isn't it too late? No, it is never too late. In fact, hardship is the most fertile ground for transformation, because comfort rarely teaches us anything. There are 3 practices that strengthen the asset of your mindset, especially when times are rough. Guard your inner words. Every day you speak silently to yourself. You say things like, "I can't handle this," or "This will never work," or "Why me?" Replace those with quieter but stronger words. "Let me try." "What can I learn here?" Or even simply, "This is not the end." Small changes in your inner speech create new pathways for your mind to walk. Choose your focus deliberately. The mind is like a camera. Whatever you point it at, that is what grows in your vision.
If you point it constantly at losses, then losses will fill your horizon. If you point it toward possibilities, however small, they will grow larger before your eyes. Do not deny reality, but do not drown in it either. Let your focus become a doorway, not a wall. Seek small victories daily. Hardship can make the future feel unbearable, but the future is not lived all at once. It arrives in pieces, in moments. Find one thing each day you can complete, no matter how modest. A task finished, a call made, a skill practiced. These are bricks, and with them you build both confidence and momentum. Remember this: mindset is not something given to you by chance. It is something you cultivate. Just as the farmer chooses whether to abandon the field or replant it, so do you choose how to use your mind when life grows harsh. And the beauty of it is this: once your mindset strengthens, it begins to attract opportunities, relationships, and insights that seemed invisible before. It is as if the world waits for you to see it with new eyes before it reveals its hidden doors. So, when you are tempted to despair, pause and ask yourself, am I multiplying my weakness or am I multiplying my strength? The answer to that question will determine far more about your future than any storm, any loss, or any circumstance. For storms pass, losses can be rebuilt, but a mind that refuses to close, that is an asset no hardship can take away. True wealth is not in what they hold in their hands, but in the spirit with which they rise again after falling.
And so, my friend, we arrive at the heart of it. The one asset you carry through hard times is not money, not property, not possessions, not even the approval of others. It is your capacity to grow. Everything else may be taken away. You may lose your savings. You may have to move out of the house you thought you'd never leave. Friends may distance themselves. Plans may collapse. Dreams may be delayed. But what cannot be stolen from you is the growth you cultivate inside. Your ability to adapt, your willingness to learn, your resilience to keep standing when the world pushes you down. This, more than anything else, is your wealth. The world celebrates material success because it can be measured and photographed. But the deeper success, the one that sustains you when storms rage, lives silently in the mind and heart. It is the wisdom you've gathered from every setback. It is the skill you've earned from every long night of practice. It is the courage you've drawn from every disappointment. And here's the beautiful truth. The more you lean on this inner asset, the more it multiplies. Unlike money, which depletes when spent, resilience strengthens the more it is used. Unlike possessions, which decay with time, wisdom deepens with age. Unlike luck, which comes and goes, skill remains with you for life. So when you face hard times, do not ask only, "How much do I have in the bank?"
Ask instead, how much have I grown? For it is your growth that will create the wealth of tomorrow. The poor wait for rescue. The wise invest in themselves, and those who invest in themselves cannot stay poor for long, because the world will always reward the person who brings more value than they take. Hardship is not a curse, though it feels like one. It is an invitation. It strips away illusions so you may discover the one thing that never abandons you, your capacity to grow. Remember this the next time life tests you. Hold on to it when everything else seems uncertain, because if you protect this asset, if you feed it, if you believe in it, then no matter how dark the night, the dawn will always find you.